Welcome to this episode in English. Life is supposed to be light and joyful. How does that sound? I'll talk about it, and you will hear how to get more energy. I'm Kerstin Thürmer. Welcome to Sports and Business. Today's episode is in English, and I'm very happy to welcome again the listeners who do not speak German to this show. My guest went through a long journey to find her inner peace and her mission. She's an entrepreneur, a 2-time bestselling co-author, and as a Limitless Life Coach, she supports her clients to create a free, joyful, and prosperous life. I'll ask her how she does that. Welcome, Judith Juhnke.
Thank you, Kerstin. Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We're really looking forward to the conversation. So let's chat about how life gets to be easy.
That sounds wonderful. Judith, thank you so much for being here. Actually, we are both German, so why have we chosen to do this interview in English?
That's a great question. And maybe for those who are listening who are German, they go like, why? Why is that? The thing is, I shifted my business to a more international scope from beginning of this year. So all my communication is running in English anyway, and I'm working with people internationally. And Kerstin also has a mixed audience, so you also tune in sometimes more to the German focus and also going beyond, right? So we thought we'll just take that opportunity and use this episode for everyone who just wants to tune in and wants to learn a bit how life gets to be easier while you still go to top performance and success.
Yes, and we'll speak about sports and business and top performance for sure. So what is a Limitless Life Coach in summary?
That's a great question as well. So you may have heard about life coaching. That is because it involves all areas of life. And my perspective on that one is, or the goal I have is to create a limitless life, not only for myself, but for everyone that works with me. And what I mean by that is that we connect back to the awareness of knowing that anything and everything that you want in your life is possible, so that you are limitless in creation, no matter in what. That can be in business or in your career, that can be in relationships, in your lifestyle, in money, whatever. You can open up any field in your life. And what I'm guiding people to is to really embody this knowing of everything is possible and there's no limits in however and whatever you want to create, because you're the creator of your life. So that is, in a nutshell, what it means to me.
So what would you say to someone who states that there is no choice, things are just happening, life is tough, we need to work a lot, and who would rather contradict you in what you just said?
Well, I have two answers on that one. The first one's rather a question. The question to that person is if he would love to or she would love to continue to think that, and if she or he was willing to challenge that thought, to check in, first of all, if that is really true for that person. So to see, are they willing to maybe take a different perspective and challenge the status quo? It may seem like that in a moment, and sometimes we just need a little reminder from outside, an impulse that gets us to this moment of, oh yeah, maybe I can think a different way. Maybe there's a different perspective on the same thing. So I will answer that question with another question. And the other answer could be, if that one does not result in a conversation or somebody just wants a bit more of explanation, then what we could be doing is going into the levels of consciousness. If somebody was interested into that one, because if we are in a state of awareness and consciousness where we feel like the whole world is happening to us, is a very victim mentality, that's what it's called, or a scarcity mindset. That means we are not taking responsibility, so we're giving away power, right? We see ourselves in the position where we are powerless, where we are the victim of our circumstances. And that is just a matter of consciousness and perspective. And that is the reason for the other question I just shared, because understanding more and more why we feel and think and what that makes us do and how our behavior is connected to that, and as a conclusion is how we see the world, and then that determines how we feel things are possible for us or not. That is all a matter of these levels of consciousness, of perspectives, and our own willingness to challenge these things. So, concluding that question, somebody can only shift that if they have the basic willingness to allow to challenge it, independent from the outcome. But you have to have the inner okay to, oh, I don't want to stick with it, because then you can't change. But, well, I don't want to have it anymore because it feels uncomfortable probably, or painful. And, oh, but yes, if I got that impulse now, that I can shift and maybe question if that's true for me, then I can change.
And let me add the sports perspective here, because in sports, everybody has already achieved something, I guess. And without believing in you and crashing your boundaries and going one step further, there's no performance possible. Just look at the world champions and Olympic athletes. Do you think that they just remain where they are and say, okay, that's the level I'm at right now? No, there must happen something a lot.
Absolutely. And that is where the mindset part starts, and then it beautifully unites with all the other levels we have, right? We definitely have the mind part because that's our thoughts. And as we know from science, thoughts and emotions are always connected. So you're back in the emotional game, and the more you learn to be aware of what's happening, why you feel in a certain way in a certain situation maybe, or why you keep having thoughts, and even being aware of that you're having maybe the same thoughts over and over and over again, that may be the reason you're stuck, right? And they make you feel a certain way. Maybe that's a very uncomfortable way because they make you feel powerless, coming back to your example, right? That everything is hard and there's no other way. So that is where I was stuck a lot. At some point when I was in my corporate career, overall, I wasn't very unhappy, but if I was really honest, I just stayed there feeling stuck because I thought, and here it is, I thought there's no other options. I thought, like, even if I quit this job here and move out of that company, what is the option? I can just do the same job in another company, but be the same thing, just different name on top of it, right? I was not able at that point to shift perspective in such a dimension that I was able to see something else beyond this very limited range of opportunities. And that is a very good example what I take people through to expand this. And that goes with the sports example that you just had. We have to broaden this perspective and the amount of possibilities, because they're always endless, even though that seems crazy, but it is. And it's a matter of your choice. And that is a learning process to get there, to be aware that it's actually possible.
And like I'm saying, set your goals which are really challenging, and you may achieve them. You will achieve them one day. Maybe it takes longer. Yes. Maybe you fail in between. Yes. Okay, fine. But at the end, you will arrive at your, like I call it, the personal finish line. So you've been an entrepreneur for some years now already. What are your learnings you can share, especially to stay motivated and not to burn out?
That's a very, very good question. I think it's relevant if you're an entrepreneur or if you are in a leadership position, wherever that may be, right? Middle management, top management, or yeah, you're an entrepreneur, because sometimes the journey just feels tough, and that's okay. The question is just, where can I draw the boundaries so that I do not burn out, so that I recharge enough, so that I stay motivated? And I want to tear this a bit apart into answer parts, because one is the high energy and taking good care of yourself, and the other one is the motivation, because there's two different answers on that one. So the energy for me is definitely learning to set boundaries. So that has to do with self-awareness, but it also has to do a lot with self-worth and self-love. Because if you burn out, and if you are a person that finds themselves in patterns of, oh yeah, of course I can take that next project. Oh sure, I'll send out that other email. Oh, it's 10 p.m. Oh well, that's fine. I'll skip yoga. I'll skip sports. No, we're not gonna go for dinner. I'll just finish that project. Or even in your personal life, somebody's wanting to go for coffee with you, but you don't really feel like going, but still you go because you don't want to say no. And learning to communicate your boundaries clearly when you feel it should be a yes, where you go no, or vice versa. And that is, for me, the major source of remaining at a good energy level. And then, of course, you can add a million things, like, make sure you do enough things that you enjoy, make sure you move enough, make sure you drink enough water, make sure you sleep enough. You could go on and on. But for me, the baseline is to learn to see when you're out of alignment, where your energy goes down, when you really need a break or that alone time or socializing time or whatever it is, but to handle yourself. So that is for the energy part. Take good care of your energy level and see yourself in that worthiness that you are allowed to say yes or no, right?
And the thing is, there is nobody telling you this. You need to listen in. You need to stop hustling at some point and listen to your body, to your heart, to your feelings. Otherwise, there is nobody who can tell you.
Exactly. And then for the motivation part, I put that apart a little bit for a reason, because motivation is something positive psychology, as one science has done a lot of research on that. And one learning that they saw out of what they were doing research on is that the level of your motivation is highly connected to the level that you may have of hope. Like, that is hope and optimism. The higher your hope level inside that you have, the more likely it is that you reach your goals, and then that is connected to motivation. And the other thing is, it's highly connected to your strength. So the more that you are aware of your strength, and that you create a surrounding, however that looks like, where you can act in your strength more. It's a learning process as well. That also connects back to motivation, because we know that the more we are acting in our strengths, these are the things that come easy to us, where we don't have to put in a lot of force and energy, right? It rather gives us energy. And that is when the more you can be in flow, the more it connects back to motivation. So it's kind of a loop that all goes together, right? So your strength and the flow state, your level of hope and optimism, just the pure trust that it will work out, even though you don't know yet how, that keeps you going, right? It's a positively attached motivation for future results, so to say. So if you have a certain connection to that is trainable, by the way, as well, all of these elements. But just having the awareness that, okay, the main part to start with is your strength. If you work on understanding what they are and how you act in them more, then the rest of the chain or the loop automatically starts to move and grow.
And here's the challenge, I believe, which is our fears. And I know that these are not depending on our cultural background or the places we live. There are certain fears, and I believe they prevent us from growing. I think it's normal to have fears, such as fear of having no money, going bankrupt, fear that people don't like us. This is definitely something for every human being. We want to belong, fear of losing my job, etc. So how can I escape that negative mindset with all those fears and follow the path you just described?
Oh, I love that question, because that is usually, when I work with people and we get to the point of like, where's your resistance or what's holding you back, where you feel blocked, then we always come to emotions. And fear, of course, is one of the emotions that everyone in the world shares. And what you just said is also backed by science, because the emotion and the brain science areas, they came to the conclusion that we have 12 basic emotions as a human that we all share, no matter where we're born or in what social circumstances. So it's the same for everyone. And connected to that is the microfacial expressions we have when we're in that emotion, even if it's just for like a microsecond or something. We cannot, because it's an unconscious movement in the expression of your face. So even if you think you're really hiding your emotions well, somebody who's trying to read that will always see it anyway, because there's this micro moment you cannot prevent from having. So having said that, we're all in that scope of that, and connected to these emotions that we all have is what they found is 4 basic desires that we all share. And one of them is the belonging part that you just mentioned. So when they started doing the research, they put above everything the question to say, how do we function as a human? So why is it that we feel and think a certain way, and how is our action connected to that? And so they came up saying we all want to be seen, we all want to be in our authentic selves. So you want to be you without having to bend and break and people please. Then the opposite part of that one is then the belonging part, because as much as we want to be the individual with all our strength and the worth, we also want to, in that exact version, belong. And that is where the fears kick in that you just mentioned. The biggest fear that we have as humans is to be left out, to be alone. Because back in those times of tigers and all these wild animals, if you were out of your tribe, you die. So that is still somehow innate in all of us. But it's something we can, if we're aware of that more as well, is you learn how to handle yourself with that emotion so that you are aware of it and you feel it, but you don't let it influence your actions and your decisions. So that is the learning process in that. So when you say, I mentioned now all these fears, you just mentioned fear to, I don't know, lose your job or of change or whatever it is, or not belong, somebody's not liking you, all these things. What exactly we're most fearful of depends on the experiences we had in our lives. So the only thing that I would disagree with what you just said is that everyone has all of these, or basically all of these fears, because what exactly we're most fearful of really depends on what our experiences in life are. So the basic thing underneath is what we share is that we want to belong, but then what shows up as a trigger to remind us of that. So losing our job, that fear is, it depends on what that is connected for that person. Is it around being recognized and the status that is connected to that job? Or is it the safety and the security that is provided through the job? That is different desires that we have. And so it depends where we have been hurt most in our past experiences if we have not worked through all these things, right? So to answer how we can deal with that better and to turn away from that fear, right? And that urge to belong is again, awareness. So learn about these things about yourself, and then just know that every time you feel very emotionally triggered in whichever way that is, that might be the fear, that might be anger or frustration, everything that we tend to think of as uncomfortable. Maybe it's sadness, it's disappointment, it's despair, whatever it is, right? It all feels kind of uncomfortable. What you can train is, now that you know that it's kind of just an emotion coming through and it's not necessarily the truth, whenever you realize that you feel triggered, first of all, know, okay, take like 4 or 5 deep breaths so your emotional energy level goes down again. And that is also backed by science. The more we are in that emotional energy, our brain cannot think. So we cannot find good solutions whenever we're high in energy of emotions, whichever one that is. So the first thing to do is always calm yourself back down. You can also breathe into that emotion. If you're a bit more advanced, that is what I teach my clients as well. You can check in with your emotions, see if there's a message for you that's a bit more advanced, but it's a thing that takes like 10 minutes, then you're through and good. Let it flow out, and then look at the situation again and just ask yourself, what is really going on here? What is it about? And that also helps you to see the other person that usually is involved, whoever that is. Because the more we are trapped in our emotional energy, the less we can see the other person. And then we just act out of our own emotion, and that is usually not very helpful in finding a solution, because the other person usually just had something completely different in mind, and we're just trapped in our own thing coming up from the past. So number one is calming down and then taking a neutral look at what's going on. You will find solutions so much quicker and so much better. And that then, there's a chain behind that. If you experience that a couple of times, that gets you calmer, more at peace, more certain, more self-confident, and you have the whole chain of motivation that in the end kicks in, because maybe that is the strength of yours and you haven't just discovered it yet. So was there another question in that, just how you can handle the emotions now that
I don't know how we started, but yeah, it's really, it's so interesting. So I know that you and I, we both believe or are sure that there is so much more power we have inside ourselves, and we believe in the universal energies which can play for us. So is that just esoteric thinking and something weird, or is there any scientific, like brain research, supporting that we can really attract changes, good changes into our lives?
Definitely there's different ones. I'll just share one. When you talk about energy and frequencies, because that is something, it's really cool because you can measure it. And even if somebody here is listening now is like, oh, but I always need kind of proof and science-backed stuff, there is. What has been found also is, because everything in the world is energy, so I'm just going to shorten that a little bit. What they have also found is that your emotions and your thoughts have a certain energy, and with that, a certain frequency level, right? And frequency is what you can measure in hertz, like Hz. And the frequency level, it's like a ladder of emotions, and it's ranked by the higher or lower level of frequencies that they have. And having said that, is with what we know through frequencies, there is also colors and light. We find frequencies everywhere. We also know that sending out a frequency, like a radio station, then it can only connect with the same level of energy. It can never connect with one that is completely apart from that. And if you just think about this physics fact, then that makes or gives a good explanation of what we know as the law of attraction. And there's a couple of other universal laws that are connected to that. If you understand them, you can create anything. And just with that, if you could put that back on the emotions, right? The highest frequent emotions that we have are gratitude. Enlightenment is one of the highest. That is, I would not go for that as the first place because we don't reach that overall on a long term, but you have joy, you have gratitude, you have even hope and optimism is high up in there. Love is not as high as you would think maybe, but it's still a good one to connect to. But higher really is the joy, the gratitude, what else we got in there? The optimism. So the things that make you feel good, right? The excitement. So the more that you learn to be in these kind of states of emotions, and I'm opening a bracket here because it's not about suppressing the ones that do not feel good, but if you want to attract something, then it's easier to be in these higher emotions, because then you attract stuff that is also on that high emotional level, on that high vibrational level. And that is where ease and flow comes in. And when we talk about how life gets easier, then that is what you want to attract more of, right? And there's another fact, and that is, it is a bit discussed, I would say, but to me it makes sense. But I invite you to have your own opinion on that one. There are some scientific approaches that have already started to link, and that's, to me, it's a very interesting theory. The lower end of the emotional frequencies are, and it's no wonder, it goes into the area of depression, of fear, of deep grief, of disempowerment, when you really feel you have no options anymore and you feel really like I can't do anything, you feel unsafe, uncertain, really that lower end. This is very low vibrational levels with frequency measured. And the theory that has started to do research around that has compared it to the frequency levels of diseases. And if you then follow along that thought that you always call in and attract on that frequency level, you can ask yourself, how many times am I sick? And how do I feel usually shortly before I get sick? Am I on that lower energy end? Am I maybe, I don't know, do I feel insecure, or do I feel a bit disempowered, or am I sad a lot? Also anger and rage is a bit higher already, but still in the lower space. So, and then on the other end, if you see people that are always in a high energy, or if you are somebody always in a high energy, just check in with yourself. How many times are you sick? So to me, it makes sense to have that theory going on. And if you ask how you can make your life easier, then this is something as well, because health for me is a very vital part of staying in that energy and having an easier life. Because obviously when you're more vital in this body that you've been provided in this life here, then it makes it all easier, right?
So what I'm taking now from this is that I can try to understand more about brain, the science, the brain research.
Yes.
And the second thing is that I can try to feel more of these positive feelings, maybe sitting down, breathing, like you said, just taking a couple of deep breaths, like I did before this podcast, just to, to be in the good energy and to be prepared for our talk, and maybe to meditate, or you call it whatever you like. What I mean with that is sitting down, maybe closing your eyes and thinking about something positive. I think this is pretty easy. It may sound too easy, but I believe this brings us into these positive feelings, and then it has an effect on our life in the end.
Definitely. And there's one thing I'm very passionate about adding always when I talk about these emotions, because the positive psychology suggests positive and negative emotions, just because it's just like what you said and what we just spoke about. If you want to go into that state of feeling better, whatever that means to you, either more relaxed or serene or more joyful, then it's really helpful and supportive to focus on those by meditation, by taking a walk. There's a very simple thing, it's called gratitude walk, and you can do it anytime in your day. 15 minutes is enough. Take a break from whatever you're doing, take a walk outside, and just find 5 things that you're grateful for. Maybe it's the birds singing, maybe it's the sun out, maybe it's the coffee you just had, maybe that is because you have the opportunity to take that walk. Whatever that is, that completely shifts energy within you, and it's easy, right? And it gets to be easy. So for these things, it's epic. You can go for meditation. That's just something really cool. We can share a link somewhere here if you want. All these brainwave music, right? That is just epic.
Yeah.
And frequency music. The frequency we just talked. There's sounds for free online that you can just plug in your ears, and it's from as short things as 2 minutes, and it completely helps your system to wind down or to energize up, whatever you want and need. And that is quick tools that you can use anytime and every day, and that are for free. And then the favorite one for me is really breath. Breath is so powerful. I'm doing breath work as well with people. And it regulates your nervous system. That is the area where you can, like, just in the beginning go for calming down and relaxing or bringing your energy up. But also you can use it for emotional release. And that is just, it's beautiful.
And it is so simple and for free. We don't need to put anything in the show notes, nothing to purchase here. If the listeners just breathe in a very hectic way, like there's some specific breath also in Pilates, I remember, where you breathe heavily. So just listen in how your body feels and how your mind feels, as opposed to taking not more than 3 deep breaths, and you will feel something. And the science behind is, like you just briefly explained, Judith, that it calms down our nervous system. I find that really fascinating. So easy, but
yeah,
so
it
effective.
It is. And honestly, it's just the tip of the iceberg, right? It's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more behind that. But for just having quick tools for that moment to, get into a different state, then this part is usually, it's really, really helpful. And I always recommend to breathe, because a lot of people tend to breathe wrong. I breathed wrong for 20 years because I didn't know better. When you breathe in into your belly, and your belly comes out. For 20 years, when I breathed in, my belly went in. And when you breathe out, then it goes in, right? And breathe not from your chest, but breathe from your belly. We tend to hold all the stress we have, and the tension and the anxiety is what we tend to hold in our bodies, and it builds up the more we forget to breathe. Depending on what you experienced in your past, you might tend to forget to breathe, especially to out breathe. And then you can scientifically add another thing, because when we in breathe, we intake oxygen, and the CO2 we out breathe gets into a huge imbalance if we forget to out breathe. And that gets you tired as well. So if you feel exhausted and tired a lot, it might be that your oxygen level is not in balance in your body. And by just breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, and then in your belly, like that, it may sound weird to start doing that. I always tell people, when you out breathe, go a bit like Darth Vader, not your body will really appreciate, and your energy level will go up.
Yeah, that's good advice. Let's talk a little bit about your own journey, which is also, quite fascinating. Where did you take the courage from when you left your safe job and started your own business?
That's always an interesting question when I get asked that, where I took that courage. So when I look back, I would not necessarily call it courageous. It was just, I had been sitting there already for like 6 years. I didn't know what to quit for. So I had wanted to go already, and the thing that was missing was a clear idea what for. So maybe it has an element of courage as well, because it was the lacking courage to just quit without knowing where to go. That is the element probably in that. What motivated me then, that is where the motivation part kicks in. I had the idea to start an e-commerce business. So it was a physical product. Back at that time, I was still at that state. I needed something that was a bit close to what I had been doing. So I have always worked in consumer industry and consumer goods. So physical products that you can touch. So I knew how to develop products and supply chains and logistic and all of that. So what made me then quit was the motivation to create something in fashion, which is still ongoing today, but it's now it has become a side business. And the coaching is 100%, but that was really the step I needed back then. Even then, though, I was already in coaching training. So I was already training to become a coach for a year already. Before then, I really quit. And I had no idea what I was going to do with that training, with that certification I was in. I just knew somehow I would use it at some point later, but I literally had no idea. So I just started with the other project first.
Yeah. And why do you work with coaches? And probably you have been in many programs so far, to what I've seen. And why do you suggest others to work with a coach?
I love that question. And if you ask me, I'd recommend to have a world, and that is also part of what I call Limitless Life, give access to all of the amazing tools that there are in the world, but that society as it normally runs keeps away from us one way or the other for several reasons we're not going to debate here. But I'm working with coaches either one-on-one or in programs for probably 5 or 6 years now straight. And even in the last 2 years, I'm always working with at least 2 people in parallel, because I find it highly helpful for my own personal development, and as an entrepreneur, of course, for my business growth. And working with other people that are ahead of you is so beneficial, because you get to see in the communities or with the coaches themselves what is possible that you might not be able to see yourself, and it gives you motivation and inspiration as to, okay, if that person can achieve it, then I can. Or it opens up a space that you didn't even know existed, and you're like, that is what I was looking for, but I just didn't know, right? So it opens up doors, not only to yourself inside to understand how powerful you are or what is still blocking you, and people can help you to just let go of everything that is not you anyway, and that's just holding you back from living that fulfilled, prosperous life and just be happy. And the other thing is really what I find important. There's a saying, when you are the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. So from time to time, you have to go into different rooms so that you can learn more, that your vision expands, that you get a broader sight of what else there is beyond what you were able to see so far, right? Like I was sitting in that job and I didn't see any other opportunity rather than just doing the same job in a different company, which is just so limiting. When I look at it today, I can just, I'm laughing at myself. I'm like, wow, oh my goodness, how could I not see the 5 million other opportunities that there are in the world to live, to earn money, and all of that? And that is why I recommend everyone to just work with a coach, especially if you already feel uncomfortable, if you already feel like you're stuck, if you feel like you got no options, all of these things, and especially if it goes beyond people that really are going to depression, then you might want to check in with a therapist. That is where at some point coaching and therapy is just, you need different level of support. But there's so many things that coaches can support you with, especially if you look for coaches that go beyond. And that is now, if coaches are listening in here, that is no offense, it's just the classic talking therapy and coaching, this, what's that called? Systemic coaching has its relevance for several things and certain things, but also has a lot of limitations, especially when it comes to developing people on the deeper levels, because that is techniques that cannot really help you shift anything that is on your emotional level, on your subconscious level, that is really holding you back. So if you want personal growth and transformation, search people who work with different tools, different methodologies, everything that looks a little bit weird when you just look at what is, if you're from the corporate world or from the very systemic society that we've been given. You know, when you look at what we're presented to when you go to see a doctor, all these, I don't know, like this morning is a very good example. Maybe I can share that if we have 5 minutes. I went to a person who is a chiropractitioner for 30 years, but I didn't go there to have that kind of treatment, which is already like a little bit beyond the classic school system, but it's still accepted nowadays. But what she is doing is called spinal network. And that is something, it's epic. I wanted to release more trauma from my body, from childhood experiences I had that were not really pleasant. And even though I had released a lot, there was one part I couldn't get to. And with what she is doing, and you know, you lay there on your belly and she is scanning your body and she's checking, but very slightly. So the chiropractor, right, they crack and crank in your spine. That's not what she's doing anymore at all. She's just with the technique she has learned, she's scanning your body and just giving micro impulses to wherever it's needed. And that is an activation point so that your body itself then can find its own way to heal that or to reshift that. So I lay there and I got 2 impulses from her while I was there, and my whole body started to just move around in a way somehow. And I felt like areas in my body where tension is going out. I felt how the spine and bones got even again. They had been like that for a while. Boom, it shifted back, and not with the cranking and the pressure, but she set some points somewhere, just impulses, so that the body can regulate itself. And that is just one example. There's so many techniques out there beyond what we might know. And that is what you get access through coaches. That has not yet entered the regular system. You don't get access to that. You have to work with people who are trained in that, and that is not what your doctor prescribes you. And that is one thing that for me is a major difference and a speed up way. So it's way faster to get whatever you want in your life. It's not only the health aspect. It lets you see clearer who you are, what you want, and lets you create that life that you want. And that is where we close to the beginning, right? How everything can get easier and successful.
And I encourage every listener here to stay curious, to try things out, to not say no. I mean, you can say no to things where you feel totally uncomfortable, but if you feel slightly uncomfortable, maybe there's the biggest transformation and positive surprise possible. Yeah, and look for coaches who are where you would like to be. So if you feel inspired by Judith today, and you think, wow, limitless life, and look at her now, or listen to her if you're listening to the podcast, this is how I would like to look like, you know what I mean, in some time, then contact her. Or if you feel that another person is there, like in sports, again, let's make the relationship into sports. I'm always telling the story, I wanted to learn how to swim freestyle for triathlon. Because it looks cooler, you know, and you may get faster, but I'm not such a fast swimmer. So for me, it was totally clear to find a coach who's able to swim freestyle. Why should I bother with, I'm not a YouTube consumer in that way. So why don't I take a coach who observes me in the pool and who teaches me how to do that? And yeah, that's also a coach. And in sports, it is so normal. Every athlete has a coach or several coaches. They have physiotherapists, they have mental coaches nowadays, getting more and more. Yeah, and for the actual sports. So why don't we take care of our inner moods and our feelings, emotions, like you said, and our own personal development? And I really like it. And personally, I think it's so much fun. Sometimes it's not very comfortable, but in the end, I really like having a person listening to me and supporting me.
Definitely. And I love what you just said about that resistance part, because usually what we tend to resist most, even though the first impulse was, oh, I want that, but then it's like, no, I'm not ready yet. It's not for me. It's too expensive. It's whatever it is. Then usually this is exactly what helps you most right now.
Yeah. Remove the brain and listen to your heart, right? Before the brain kicks in. We know that mechanism.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, there are so many different styles in coaching and different coaches you can book. What is your personal approach?
I have an approach that meets in the middle, coming from one end from spirituality and from the other end from science. So that is, when we shared here a couple of examples from the emotion science or the positive psychology or the brain science. So that is the explanations and techniques from that area. And I mix them with rather what you would probably call energetics or from the quantum field or spiritual techniques, because then what kicks in is the energy that we talked about, the frequencies and all of that. So if you understand both, then it's a beautiful mix to take people through. And that is, I'm certified in 3 different things, and that is 2 from more the scientific area and 1 coming from the energetics area. And then I have a couple of other trainings on top and additional like workshops and things I added. But this is the 3 baselines that I do. One is the emotion coaching, the other one is the positive psychology, and the other one, it's called, in English, we call it an energy healer, so to say. So it's like the quantum work that you maybe see online with other coaching people. So that is the core of what I'm doing.
And where can people get in touch with you best? On social media, or do you have a website which I can link in the show notes?
Yeah, you can link in the show notes. Just a disclaimer, the website is the last thing still in German. So for anyone listening in English, please just hop over to any of the socials. So there's LinkedIn, there's Instagram, there's TikTok, there's Facebook. So you basically find me everywhere. So if you just type in my name, Judith Juhnke, and that's what will show up. And also the website should show up directly. It's judithjuhnke.com. And that is an extra thing for the German speaking community, because that is one thing I wanted to share with you guys here. That is my latest book project. That's a German one. I do also have an English one that we may link in the show notes that I published with last year. But this one is close to my heart now because it's about decision making. In English, you would call it the Atlas of Decision Makers. It's 60 short stories by 30 people, and one story is written by me, sharing a bit about a decision that was life-changing for me. And it's all the stories are across all areas of your life. So it's very personal stories in there, but also business-related decisions, why people and how people decided, and what were the consequences before they didn't take the decision, and what was the consequence afterwards. So it's very inspirational. And the thing is, we just got listed in Düsseldorf as well, in the Meyersche Buchhandlung on the Kö. So if you are a local somewhere here in the area, if you'd love to support us, go and gift someone that book or buy for yourself. And everything that we earn from it goes to the ocean cleanup. So it's for all of us. It's a non-profit project, and we love to support that. I don't have the latest stand on that, on the donation to the ocean cleanup, but the last one I had was close to 10,000 euro already. So it's really running well. It's got a best-selling position in online as well. So feedback is really good, and it's a very nice gift. So if you like to dive into decision making, then there's this. And if you feel like working one-on-one, that is what I do. And there's a new group thing coming in winter. And there's one other special thing. If you are somebody who wants to start a business, or you already have a business, but you think you need to pivot it because maybe you started it offline and now you want to take it online, or whatever kind of change you need, September 5th is, that is, you're going to publish later, right? But that's okay. You can jump in January as well. So we're going to rerun. That is, I'm working with somebody else together. It's called Shift to Success. So it mixes the personal development from me and business strategy with another coach. So we're combining that. So anyone in here who's interested in that, then that would be just contact me somewhere on Instagram or LinkedIn. And then we'll figure out which is the best that suits and supports you right now for whatever you need.
Great. And I'll put everything into the show notes, all the links where you can be found. So just before we close, Judith, just a couple of more questions. Let's talk about sports. So are you still climbing every tree you see as you did as a child, or have you found another favorite sport?
I love that question. And when I was little, I really, my mom or my dad used to look outside for me, like, definitely I build some tree. I don't do that anymore today. Surprise. And even though I have been doing some kind of sport all my life, like really all my life, today what I'm usually doing is a lot of yoga, different ones for stretching, but also for building power, strength, and muscles. And I combine it with running. So I have fallen in love over the last decade with running. For me, it's completely finding peace of mind and also building strength. I love to feel how after time, hitting 10 kilometers, 15 kilometers back in training, that is for me I even made it up to my personal success in this one, a half marathon like 5 years ago. So that's my
Great.
personal success on that one. While I had as a kid a couple of really not so positive experiences with sports. So for me, it was always a kind of a hate and love thing. But I found peace with that now. And that running and yoga combination is really what I found works best for me. And also, it's flexible enough to fit into any schedule anyway.
Yeah, and you just need yourself and the nature outside and a pair of shoes. So that's really
Exactly.
good. And I imagine that this fits into your entire business as well, like yoga, calming down, and yeah, doing something good for your body anyway, and exercising. That rounds the picture for me. So
Absolutely.
my subtitle is top performance. What does it mean for you personally?
Let me reflect for a moment. It means to have the ability to, when you want to, be on the spot in a moment when you need to. So that involves the ability to intentionally be very focused, but then also to let go again. So it's, for me, it's the ability to, with ease, play in between the high performance and the relaxation. So, right, it's going all in and then going all out. So the ability to really play with that and be at ease with that so it does not stress you. That for me means top performance.
Judith, thank you so much for our interview today, for your openness, for everything you shared. I hope that our listeners take something away from this talk. So my last question is, what is the one thing or your personal routine which supports you every day to be in your best energy?
I do a lot of things regularly every day, many small things, but I think and they keep changing a lot. But the one core thing that is always included is breath work in whatever way. Even if it's a 10-minute session, or I'll take it down to an hour, depending on how much time I have. That is always in. And then I play around with dancing, with yoga, with some other push up like strength trainings, or with just really sitting meditative and reflecting. So that is the base with what I work every day. But the core thing that is always included is breath work.